The year 2030 is not as far away as estimations make it seem. It's merely 5 years away, and in that year, or before, life in the coastal settlement of Nanumanga, Tuvalu, will be at risk. Over the years, the Pacific island has drastically transformed due to climate change and rising water levels. The sea once provided life and culture to the Pacific Islander nation. Each dawn used to bring new hope for a new catch. Today we accompany Tane, a subsistence fisherman who faces daily uncertainty as the ocean warms and acidifies. He woke up bright and early as the glowing sun rose, peeking over the horizon as if pulled up by a giant fishing hook. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of salt as he stepped onto his boat. Fishing had been a practice passed from generation to generation in his family. It was all he knew. Growing up, he'd swim into the coral reef, searching for fresh uni to feast on with his family. But in the past decade, he'd noticed so many changes. His country was changing and his livelihood was at risk. As he rowed through the lagoon, he thought of the changes he had never had the privilege to take for granted. In recent years, he noticed that fish are becoming scarce and less accessible. To him and his family, fishing wasn't only sustenance. It was a way of life and a way of financial support. What job would he have if no fish were even there to catch? What would life be without an island to live on? He grew up hearing stories of the creation of Tuvalu, the story of Te Pusi Mo Te Ali, the eel and the flounder. A story that had a place in the heads of every Tuvaluan alive, whether in Taiwan, Australia, or New Zealand. Once friends, the eel and the flounder had a contest that led to their downfall. Their battle over heavy stone finally crushed the flounder to become the Tuvaluan atolls, and the eel that became a coconut palm essential to their lives. It seemed like the picture-perfect description of Tane's life and his relationship with the sea. A place once so bountiful and providing was no longer the same, and there was nobody to blame but humans and their blight on the environment. As Tane floated down the lagoon, his brain was full of despair as he recounted his decisions with the families in his village. The vegetable crops and grain were at risk of flooding as the seawater kept rising. They didn't even have the drinking water they once had. Groundwater was salinated. Vegetables were going bad. Fish was slowly being reduced, and as a cherry on top of the cake, their homes were all drowning. Many families contemplated leaving Tuvalu altogether. Now, with all the environmental onslaught, everything has just become much more precarious. All he could do was fish and hope his economic status improved, or he'd be left behind on a drowning island. His neighbors like Aroha had the opportunity to move on to New Zealand. Now Aroha regularly sent money back to the family, while Tane worried more and more about the well-being of his children. Though he worked hard daily like Aroha, he still could not help and care for his family. Every family like his felt trapped, and he couldn't help but feel horrible as he waited and waited for his fish net to catch a tuna or a snapper swimming deep down in the sea. Disgruntled after a long and hard day with little fortune, Tane sailed back to the island. Soon after, he trudged all the way back to meet his fellow villagers for their monthly round table, discussing new options and updates about Tuvalu and its fate. Sitting down, he looked up at the room of familiar faces illuminated by the light. The air slowly cooled, and the sound of waves crashing filled his ears. Conversations about previous leaders, such as Felete Teo and Kosia Natano, filled the table. With that, the question of the coastal fisheries management plan continuing came up. The government had done its best with this plan, providing finances for the Tuvaluan fishers. Tane himself had benefited from this scheme 3 years ago. But how could it be adapted to current scenarios? So much has changed, Tane stated. Other fishermen agreeing vigorously with this response. Listening to this, people with hope proposed and discussed potential solutions for their village. Philo Noah, one of the local fishermen, said exploring alternative livelihoods could possibly take Tuvaluan culture to other nations. The digital archive and its importance were brought up through their island was at stake. They would always be considered Tuvaluans no matter what their location is. Tomu has also agreed with him. He said the digital archive is literally a representative of our whenua, our connection to our island and its environment. Not only that we've had people in power fight for us before. Look at Simon Kofe. He literally gave a speech about our country in the ocean. Actions like these do make large impacts globally. This brought some hope to the villagers present at the meeting. Tane sat there looking at the people he considered his own and thought back to Te Pusi Mo Te Ali. Yes, they turned on each other, and yes, they fought. What was once bountiful was no longer there, but they pushed through to create something bigger than themselves, a home for Tuvaluans. Just like Tomu when he brought up whenua, they would never lose the concept and culture of Tuvalu. Now, with that thought, Tane realized this story genuinely related to the people of his country. Despite losing their livelihoods and much hope, they stood together and spoke to the world. Whether it be in the ICJ demanding more aid or in their efforts to maintain sustainable practices while in despair. Tane left the meeting with a lot on his mind as he went home and lay in bed, listening to the sound of the ocean. He thought of what could happen without these people and their efforts to make change, no matter how big or small. To the world, his life is a testament to the Tuvaluans and their struggle, a call for help. It is also a reminder that Tuvalu and Tane would not stop until they found a way to preserve their home despite the difficulties with the climate and even the loss of land. Tuvalu isn't bound to the ground, but to its people's cultural identity and work, to its whenua, he thought as he finally drifted off to sleep.